What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast.
Where we talk about fights, news, and more.
And today we're previewing UFC 327 that takes place this Saturday in Miami. I have to say, this is a pretty stacked card. I mean, name-wise, maybe it doesn't stand out too much, but if you're an MMA fan, you'll look at some of these matchups and really know that it's quite a stacked card, actually. And at the top of the bill, we have the fight for the light heavyweight title. As you all know, Alex Pereira moved up to heavyweight and therefore left the light heavyweight title. And the two guys who are battling it out for the title are, of course, Jiri Procházka and Carlos Ulberg, the number 2 and number 3 ranked light heavyweights in the world. And it's a very even fight going into this one. Jiri Procházka is a slight favorite, but it's a very even one, we have to say. I mean, for me, it's a very hard fight to pick, but what do you have in this one? Do you have a preference, or do you also think that it's quite difficult?
Yeah, it's a really difficult fight to pick here, and almost I'm leaning both ways almost because one way you could look at it is stylistically. You could look at it and say that maybe Ulberg has the advantage just because he is so well rounded, very well, he controls his fights very well. He could be sort of the antidote to Jiri Procházka's just chaos energy here, but also I really like Jiri as a fighter, and what we've seen with Jiri over and over again is that he can get into some difficult moments, especially last time out against Khalil Roundtree in the first 2 rounds, but then he just turns up in the 3rd round and he just unleashed completely. And he didn't actually take that much damage in that fight as we may have thought at first hand, because his head movement was really good as well. So I think that this is a difficult fight because in the striking department, I do lean again for Jiri pretty heavily here. I do think that Jiri just has longer reach. I think the power difference here is quite big. I think that Ulberg, sure, he can knock guys out like we saw against Reyes last time out, but I don't think that that's something that he can pull out every time, and it's difficult against someone like Jiri who has such good head movement and well, maybe you wouldn't say defense because he leaves himself open, but he does have good head movement and he knows how to apply pressure and counters as well. So in this fight, I don't know. It could be, a scenario where similarly to Kelly Roundtree, but maybe even more so, Carlos Ulberg controls the fight pretty well in the 1st round, and I don't think, some people may say that Ulberg has some good grappling that can cause a problem for Jiri, but I don't think that that's a major problem. Jiri is quite well as well in the grappling, and I see both of them, neither of them really having a major sort of advantage in terms of grappling or just overall striking. The one thing I think is here that Jiri has more power, and that's what I'm going to base this on. I think that Jiri probably, I don't know, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a Jiri similar to last time out, a 3rd round knockout here for Jiri Procházka versus Carlos Ulberg to secure the vacant light heavyweight championship and get the belt. That's my prediction, at least for this fight. Do you have some other points to bring up here, or are you picking Carlos Ulberg instead?
I mean, I have been in the past thinking if this matchup was to be, I would maybe pick Ulberg because he looks
Yeah.
quite crisp. He obviously trains at City Kickboxing in Auckland, I think it is, with Israel Adesanya and Eugene Behrman, and it's a very good team, and he's a good striker. But I don't want to come across as a hater, but you mentioned the Dominic Reyes fight. Dominic Reyes is a very good fighter, of course he is, and we'll go over that in his upcoming fight on this card. But when you watch that fight, I mean, it was a pretty easy knockout for Ulberg in that one. I mean,
Yeah.
Reyes kind of went in with his chin up high. It was on a plate for Ulberg. So even though Reyes is a good opponent on paper, in that circumstance, I'm not sure I want to give all that credit to Ulberg. And when you like look through the other fights, maybe this is the one where he steps up to the plate. And if he beats Jiri, I'll give him all the credit. But the Jan Blachowicz fight, we watched that one together last year. I think he lost that one. It was at best for him a draw. And personally, I think Jan Blachowicz beat Carlos Ulberg. So we're not counting that one, in my opinion. And again, there's no shame to losing to Jan Blachowicz because he's one of the best guys in light heavyweight, arguably ever. But before that, Volkan Ozdemir, yeah, he's an alright contender, but it's nothing special really to beat him. The fight before that, Alonso Menfield, again, a decent fighter, but is he Jiri Procházka? No, not close. And I mean, we can't forget that in the UFC, Jiri has only lost to Alex Pereira, the greatest light heavyweight of all time, arguably.
Yeah.
Certainly of this era. So to say that Carlos Ulberg will come in and do a job against Jiri, it can happen. For me, though, I'm on your side. I reckon that Jiri gets this one done. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the head movement because that stood out to me both in the Jamal Hill and the Khalil Roundtree fight for Jiri. That his head movement looked a lot better than in the Alex Pereira fights. And I really like that because before he was moving on a straight line and it looked kind of easy to catch him out. But now he's worked on that, he's worked on his deficiencies, and he looks a lot better. But as you rightly said, there are always some shaky moments in a Jiri fight. There's always moments where you go like, oh, what's he doing? It's never like a smooth sailing way towards victory, and I'm sure that's going to be the case as well this Saturday. But all in all, I'm agreeing with all of your points there, actually, and I reckon that Jiri gets this one done a bit on his, his 5 round fight experience as well. And I would lean towards, I would say a 3rd round TKO would be my prediction. So we both have Jiri in that one. Then.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Also, I forgot to bring that up with just Ulberg. His resume isn't really that good. He's almost a bit overhyped actually. When you actually watch him fight. Also, I don't think that he's. I think that he controls his fights pretty well. He's decent. He's solid. It's nothing. It's not bad or anything, but I don't really see him as champion material. He's not the same level as someone like Pereira who can put down Jiri. Like you said, it's only Pereira who has been able to put down Jiri before. So I also agree with that completely.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and there's certainly a reason why this one is close on the odds, because both guys are very skilled, but they have their deficiencies as well, of course. But what I personally love about this one is that it's a strikers matchup. Both guys are
Yep.
in base and heart, they are kickboxers, and then personally I love that because for me, there's no way this fight is going to be boring, and I've never watched a Jiri Procházka fight where it's boring. So hopefully, either way, we're in for a really, really good one come Saturday here. Are we done with the main event, or do you have anything to add, or is it time to move on?
No, we can move on to the next fight.
Yeah, of course. It's Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa. And the elephant in the room, the co-main was supposed to be a title fight, but it got postponed to UFC 328, so that card's going to be a lot more stacked, and instead we've ended up with this one, which is it co-main event worthy? That's a debate that I don't know if it's worth having, but what I do know is that I'm excited for this fight. Paulo Costa is a really fun and entertaining kickboxer. He's good talking out of the ring, but is also very good inside the octagon. But Azamat Murzakanov is undefeated. He's in a really, really good streak in the UFC. This one, again, is pretty close on odds. We have Murzakanov as a slight favorite here. Do you think that's warranted, or who do you have in this one?
I think this one is also pretty difficult to predict, but mainly for another reason, that being it is at light heavyweight, right? It's not a catch bout fight.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm pretty
It's
sure.
light heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, and Paulo Costa is not. I think he's had one fight before at light heavyweight against Marvin Vettori. He lost that one. I don't really remember why exactly they fought at light heavyweight. Both of them are middleweight fighters, but it was a light heavyweight bout. But Paulo Costa lost that one. So a big aspect here could be how does Paulo Costa cope with the higher weight. Paulo Costa, when you look at him, you see his frame, how big he is. I definitely think that he can be a light heavyweight. That's not a problem. But sort of how does the weight gain affect his movement? Maybe his technical striking, stuff like that can be a factor here. And also, Azamat Murzakanov is a very, you could say, very experienced. He hasn't lost a single fight in his pro MMA record. He's 16-0. In the UFC, I'm pretty sure that he is something like 7-0, maybe, or 6-0. It seems like.
Mhm.
So he has a bit of UFC experience as well. He's quite, he's not that young anymore, but neither is Paulo Costa. So I wouldn't say any of them have that much of an experience. Maybe lead. Paulo Costa is probably even more experienced, but in terms of light heavyweight experience, you definitely give it to Murzakanov. I mean, Murzakanov's resume it's not that great. He did knock out Alexander Rakic, which sure, that is a win that we do rate, but at the same time, before that, Rakic had a lot of losses in a row.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't prime Rakic by any stretch of the imagination. So I think this one's difficult to predict. I want to go with Paulo Costa here because I don't know. I just believe that Paulo Costa is more technical, that he simply is just a better fighter than Murzakanov. I think that Murzakanov, he has a grappling edge here probably, but I think that Costa is good enough to at least defend and try to keep it on the feet. Murzakanov isn't bad either on the feet, and I can see why he is the betting favorite, simply because it's sort of an unsure element. We have seen Murzakanov before. We know that he is 16-0. We know that he has been the light heavyweight for a long time, and Costa is stepping up. But still, I do think that Costa can get this one done. Costa is bigger than Murzakanov even. It's not even. It could just as well be Murzakanov that's stepping up to light heavyweight. Murzakanov is actually shorter, quite significantly shorter, and also has a little bit shorter reach than Paulo Costa. Mm-hmm. So I think that if Paulo Costa can keep this on the feet, he can probably, if the size, if the weight gain goes well, and he keeps a lot of his energy, then I think that he can bring this one to, let's say, I don't know if he can knock him out or not. I'm gonna give him a third round unanimous decision. I'm gonna say that he bangs him up on the feet and he manages to keep it on the feet. I don't think that Murzakanov has the skill to keep up with Paulo Costa in the striking. Lucas Tracy, another MMA podcaster, YouTuber, used to say something like lighter man skill, the one that steps up to the higher division. Like Volkanovski, for example, he has more skill because he is from the lighter division where skill is more important. So I'm going to go with it a bit as well here. Lighter man skill, Paulo Costa takes it against heavy Murzakanov.
I mean, that's so interesting because we haven't really talked before this about our picks. And I agree with basically everything you said. The headline for me here in my pick is lighter man skill, exactly that.
Yeah.
I've seen so much that looks so promising from Paulo Costa, but sometimes he hasn't been able to empty the gas tank, or there hasn't been enough energy left within him. And sometimes it's the power that I look at, and I look at, you have big muscles, you have good technique, you have the right shot selection, but it's that pop at the end of your shots isn't really there. And sometimes I've seen in both in MMA and boxing with the striking that can come down to weight cut. And like you said, I mean, Murzakanov has been fighting at light heavyweight a while, and he's 5'10". Paulo Costa is 6'1" and has always been campaigning at middleweight. So he's a big middleweight, and I believe that this will do him wonders to actually move up to light heavyweight, don't have that extreme of a weight cut, and therefore be able to maybe stack a bit more muscle to have a bit more power in his shots. but most importantly, actually back himself to be able to survive. This one is also only 3 rounds, I think, because I've been frustrated in the past. The fight for Paulo Costa against Sean Strickland, his latest loss, that was 5 rounds, and he did very well at times. And we all know that Sean Strickland is, of course, a very good fighter, but he lost like by 1 round. But I felt like when I watched that it was a lot down to the fact that he didn't really back himself to actually manage the whole fight, because he knew that he was cutting weight quite badly. Said that after the fight as well. And I think now at light heavyweight, not having to cut as much weight, like you said, I'm not going to repeat it, but the striking is always decent. We know that. But now a bit extra weight, a bit less weight cutting. I back Paulo Costa here. I'm actually surprised that is quite a significant underdog, but I also reckon that it gets done. I'm gonna actually piggyback on you on the fact that I'm gonna say a decision, unanimous decision for Paulo Costa, but I would not be too surprised if if he got like a TKO or KO in this fight actually.
So, moving on down the card, we have the next fight. A heavyweight bout between Curtis Blaydes and Josh Hokit. So, this one is quite interesting. We have seen differing opinions on this Mr. Hokit in his rise in the UFC. His short career so far in the UFC, but still, he has, he has been a divisive figure. And Curtis Blaydes, a long time heavyweight fighter here, who's been here for many years. Does he have what it takes to maybe put this Josh Hokit down and humble him? Or what's your opinion on this fight?
I mean, I respect Josh Hokit. The way he's talking, I really do appreciate it. Some may say it's cringe, and I certainly think so. But it's at least he's talking and he's getting other people to talk. I mean, all the highlights from the press conference is from him, and he's not even the main or co-main event. So I mean, credit for him for that. And he's undefeated. But for me, this is sometimes you talk about a step too far. For me, this is 10 steps too far. I mean, going from the guys he's fought, even though there are in the UFC, the likes of Denzel Freeman or Max Jimenez, sure, they're all right guys, but Curtis Blaydes, I mean, it's like, you know, swimming in a pond and then swimming across the Atlantic. I personally believe that Curtis Blaydes is going to be making easy work of Josh Hokit. And that might be a bold claim, since Curtis Blaydes, he's the favorite, but he's a very slight favorite. And this one is very close on the odds as well. Almost every fight on this card is actually on the main card, which is interesting and makes of a great night of fights. But I'm gonna keep it short and sweet here. I appreciate Josh Hokit and the fact that he's talking, but Curtis Blaydes. He's one of my favorite fighters. Not necessarily because of his personality, but I think he's very underrated. He's uh, by the bone. He's a wrestler, but his striking is very good as well. He's in good movement. He's a good counter striker. He has a lot of heavyweight power. He moves very well. I think he's just all wrong for Hokit, and I would predict I'm going to say a round 2 TKO or ground and pound, in my opinion. What do you reckon about this one?
Yeah, I share your opinion on Hokit here. That you know, sure he can be a bit cringe, but we need these type of figures in the UFC to actually create some entertainment value. Not everything has to be so super, I don't know, serious or professional. It is actually an entertainment business, and some especially if he actually manages to rile up his opponents. We saw that with Dricus du Plessis earlier when he had his run, towards the top of the game. Then when he was making Sean Strickland and Adesanya cry and everything, sure, some people saw that as being offensive or cringe or whatever, but most people appreciated the fact that it actually creates some real tension in the fight. And I'm not comparing Hokit really here to Du Plessis, because it's a completely different type of fighter, different level of fighter, different level of trash talker. But Hokit, still, he represents, that kind of personality that he wants to actually create some drama, something more about the fights than just the fights themselves. And
Yeah.
for that, I respect him. I also respect his, his run in the UFC. I think that he's picked up some performance of the night, not against the best opponents. Obviously, he hasn't been fighting anyone of really noteworthy. I think. So we don't really have anything to say about his resume, except for the fact that he's, I guess, undefeated. But when you haven't fought anyone that good, then it doesn't really matter. So with Curtis Blaydes, I also agree there. I think that Blaydes, he has been underrated for some time. Out of his last 7 fights, the only 2 he lost was against Tom Aspinall and Pavlovich, 2 of the maybe actually the top 2, probably the top 2 best fighters in the heavyweight division. And except for them, he won against or not really won. It was an injury, but still, the Aspinall fight was the second fight between them when Aspinall picked up an injury in the first one.
Yeah.
In this time, he also won against Almeida. He won versus Rosenstruck, and the one versus Kunyev, the last fight for Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. It's a step too far for Curtis Blaydes here, and he's gonna put Hokit down. I think I'm actually gonna go with the first round even. I don't know why. I'm just feeling it that even though
I can see
Hokit,
that.
he's a fun guy. He's a little bit cringe, but he also is fun, and I wouldn't want to see him put out maybe that easily. But I don't know. There's gonna be some comedic aspect. I just feel like with this fight, first round, he's gonna be jumping around. Hokit is gonna just be pressuring, thinking that he's gonna fire himself up. I'm gonna go. I'm in the main event now. I'm gonna go out and take this, and then just Blaydes just gonna counter with something and put him down. So I'm actually even going maybe late first round KO or TKO for Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah. I reckon that's probably a good pick. I mean, my honest prediction away from the official decision is just that we're gonna have one of these moments where after the fight we sit and look at it like, how did this fight even come about? How was this even on odds?
Yeah,
I mean, I reckon that Blaydes is gonna do this easily, to be honest. But and he's even
yeah,
said before the fight, Curtis Blaydes said, they said like, oh, what's your aspiration after this fight? Because he's ranked very highly in the UFC, and he's like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't do too much for me because Hokit is not ranked. He's not even basically claiming a title shot because he's acknowledging this is a pretty easy fight for him. And Curtis Blaydes is a very
yeah,
humble guy, so when he puts it like that, I think it's going to be pretty smooth sailing for Curtis Blaydes, sorry, come
yeah.
Saturday here. But maybe there's something we're missing out because I agree with you. I think it's going to be a dominant victory from him, possibly in the first round. But the odds are even. So maybe Hokit can cause an upset here and elevate his name. If he beats Curtis Blaydes, he's like one of the top 5 heavyweights in the UFC out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
credit to him in that case. But when we do our review, I expect us to sit here and say pretty smugly that, what did we tell you? It was easy, basically. But
Yeah. I don't know. The odds. I feel like the odds tend to sort of overhype the undefeated guys, even if they only fought no one with that good of a resume. The odds sort of look at, okay, is this guy 16-0, 8-0, and they think that, okay, that means that he can't lose because he hasn't lost before. So it's
yeah,
such a low chance that he loses the next one that means that he's gonna win. So I don't know. I think that, yeah, I don't think that the odds are right on this one. Actually, I think that the odds are just going too much on form here. And they see that, Bleed, he has one. Sure, he has a couple of victories, but he also has a couple of losses. Hokit just has a clean record, but it's not a good record if you actually look at it. So,
no.
yeah, that's.
All right.
But
Should we move on then?
yeah,
Down the card, we have another light heavyweight matchup. 3 out of 5 on this card, which is always love when you keep a theme throughout the weight division on a card. I think it builds a hype for that division, and you can look at the matchups and everything. This one is again, of course, an evenly matched fight. Dominic Reyes taking on Johnny Walker, and Reyes coming in at a slight favorite. And personally, I do see that Reyes, of course, the only guy to defeat John Jones, even though he didn't get the decision. Most people regard him as the winner against John Jones in that fight. And he's fought a lot higher competition than Johnny Walker has done, I think it's fair to say. But he's also lost against the likes of Blachowicz, Procházka, last time out, Ulberg, as we covered, in my opinion, pretty stupidly, going in with his shin high. And then on the other side of the octagon, we have Johnny Walker, who I was
Yeah.
laughing a bit at before. You know, he's so goofy, he's like a walking meme. And then he goes out against Shang Mingyang, who is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best light heavyweights in the UFC, and gets the win, gets the TKO, which I could have never seen coming. So maybe there's a lot more to be said about Johnny Walker than some of us think. For me, this is quite a difficult one. What do you think? Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult, it's a pretty well put together card, both in terms of, you cover that a lot of the fights are in the same weight division, 3 fights for the light heavyweight division on the same card, but also that most or basically all of the fights are actually quite, even on maybe on paper, of course, as we covered with Blaydes versus Hokit, maybe isn't that even actually should be. Yeah, in terms of on paper, most of these fights are pretty even, and Dominic Reyes, Johnny Walker. I don't know. I share your opinion in terms of Reyes here, in that I think that he has similarly sort of to Blaydes, and we're talking about Blaydes Hokit. It's not, of course, on the same. I think both of these guys are much more equal, but still, Reyes has fought more difficult opinion, and I actually also think that Reyes has the better. Let's say, even though he lost versus Ulberg, it was a pretty stupid loss, like you covered. And if we look at the fights before, picking up 3 knockouts in a row versus, or TKOs in a row, I should say, against Nikita Krylov, Anthony Smith, and Dustin Jacoby, which are pretty decent wins. And if we look at Johnny Walker, sure, he picked up that win against Shang there, but before that, he lost against Ozdemir and Ankalev, and getting knocked out by Ankalev. I know, really, I don't think that Ankalev has that much power in his hands, even though he has picked up some knockouts before. I don't know. I think that someone like Reyes actually has more potential power here, and I think that Reyes has what it takes to knock Johnny Walker out. Just because Johnny Walker won the last one and Reyes lost the last one doesn't mean that there is doesn't mean that both of these guys are pretty old. It doesn't mean that they have sort of equal skill level all of a sudden. I think that Reyes is a better fighter. Sure, Walker is pretty unpredictable. He can cook something crazy up, I don't know, a flying knee or a spinning elbow, and get something on it, but we don't know that. I think that Reyes, he can control this fight. I think that Reyes can control this fight, and he can find knockout win here in the second round TKO for me, Dominic Reyes. That's my prediction. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair, to be honest. I agree with your prediction there. I favor Dominic Reyes quite heavily here, even though, of course, he lost last time out against Ulberg. But I think a top fighter like Reyes, he will have learned, because as I was alluding to earlier, it was kind of stupid mistake. He went in with shin high against a striker as Ulberg. That's only going to end in one way. Hopefully, he's learned his lesson here, and I just see these two guys as different levels. Johnny Walker, he's decent, I suppose, but Reyes for me is still a top guy within this division. So I think it's going to make pretty easy work of Johnny Walker, to be honest. Um, the only thing throwing me off, sorry, is that Mingyang Zhang win for Johnny Walker, because I never expected that. But as you rightly said, before that, he lost to Ozdemir. That's not impressive in round one. And then getting knocked out against Ankalaev. Ankalaev's very good, but as you rightfully said, he's not a striker, is he? Um, and then before that, yeah, he beat Anthony Smith and Paul Craig with a combined age of like 150. I mean, can you take anything from those wins? In my opinion, you really can't. So I agree with you. I reckon that Reyes is going to get this one done via TKO, and I would say round one or round two. I'm gonna stick my neck out and say round one TKO for Dominic Reyes here against Johnny Walker. But yeah, is it
Yeah,
time to move on to the last fight of the main card? And I suppose we have two
yeah, sure.
two veterans of the featherweight division. Cub Swanson in his what's supposed to be his retirement fight against Nate the Train Landwehr. Where do you stand on this one?
Damn, I mean, I think all of these fights, this entire card, it's quite close in most of these fights, and this one I think is also really close. Probably one of the closest fights on the card, because both of these guys, I think that Swanson, maybe at his peak, is probably a little bit better. I don't know, and he has been at least better as of late. And Landwehr, before, also decent. Yes, both of these guys have been around for a long time. You could call them legends, maybe even. They're Swanson is 42 years old at this point, and Landwehr is 37. So they're no youngsters by any means. They have been in a lot of scraps. Both of them have lost. They've lost their fair share of fights. Swanson has, obviously, maybe he's like 5 years older, so he's had a bit more fights and has lost 40 bouts. That's quite a lot. So he's no stranger to losing, even though it's 130, of course, but he's no stranger to losing fights as well. Maybe even more so than Nate Landwehr. So, but in terms of style, both of these guys are strikers, I would say. Both of them, sure, they can grapple a little bit, but that's not their strong area. Both of them want to scrap, they want to strike. And in terms of the striking matchup here, I'm probably going to go with Nate Landwehr, even. Nate Landwehr here, because I just feel like, he has a bit more. Actually, this fight sort of for me comes down to who has more to go for here, who has more drive. Nate Landwehr is not going to go into retirement after this fight. He's lost the last two. He knows that this is Swanson's last fight. As he said, it's his retirement fight. So I think Landwehr will be going into this, quite confident that I'm gonna get this win against this retiring guy, and I'm gonna keep going after that, earn some more money in the UFC. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure of the method. I think that both of these guys, they're quite, quite possible for both of them to knock. They both have knockout power. Not only, decision wins, they also have quite a lot of knockout wins. So I could see Landwehr knocking Cub Swanson out here even, but I'm not gonna say that he does. I'm gonna give it to I'm gonna actually. I think this is gonna be really close. I'm maybe even gonna go with like a split decision for Landwehr here. But yeah, I'm gonna go with a split decision here for Nate Landwehr. I think it's gonna be really close, and it's gonna come down to, a hair almost by the end of this. That's my opinion. Do you have anything more here in terms of is there anything technical maybe that I missed here? I don't know. In this
Right. I
fight,
mean,
some weakness that either of them really have.
if you get that one, I will be very impressed if you predict a split decision. That's very very
Yeah,
impressive if you do so. I mean, I reckon that you have the best pick. I mean, I don't want to be that one-dimensional, but just looking at the age itself, when was the last time a 42-year-old won a UFC
yeah,
ranked fight? And maybe, I'm a romantic when it comes to this kind of stuff, and it's Cub Swanson's retirement fight. And as you rightfully pointed out, he has 14 losses. That's a lot. And it's not even like, some great guys who have like 60 wins and 40 losses. He has 30 wins and 14 losses. That's not good. But saying that, I'm actually gonna, for once, be different from your prediction and actually predict Cub Swanson winner. I think that Nate Landwehr often moves in to range with his chin quite high, and when you face a Cub Swanson, albeit a 42-year-old Cub Swanson, and that might be where I'm, messing up here in my thinking. But Swanson is a good counter striker, and I actually believe that we've seen that even in his latest fights, even the last time out against Quarantillo. I mean, he still looked, in my opinion, quite crisp on the feet and on the counter striking, and he was 40 by then. But with that said, that was like 1.5 years ago, so maybe he's finished. But I just have a feeling that Cub Swanson will catch Nathan Train here, and it's like how do you say it's like a double-edged sword here, where like you know Nate has 2 losses. If he loses this one at 37, maybe it's time to call it quits. And that can go 2 ways. That's what I mean. Either it's like the pressure you need to actually put your foot on the pedal and actually get the finish, or perhaps it can add some more pressure to him. I'm not sure personally how he's going to handle that, but I reckon he's going to go for it, like you rightfully said. And in my opinion, Cap Swanson is going to capitalize on that and catch him coming in with counter. And I would predict a round 2 TKO from Cap Swanson here in his retirement fight. Like I said, that might be wishful thinking, but yeah, that's my prediction for that one. But that's everything from us. Those are our official predictions ahead of UFC 327 this Saturday that takes place in Miami. Jiri Procházka versus Carlos Ulberg. Don't miss it. We'll, of course, catch you guys next week for our review and instant reaction to this event. But thank you guys a lot for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.